That's right, folks. You get 2 update videos from me in one night. This one, on the other hand, is a completely different ballgame from my previous update video, because tonight I'd like to try something a little different. Now, a few months back, I believe in June, DC Comics announced that they would be relaunching their entire line of superhero comics. Now, this means, for those of you who are unaware of what a reboot is when continuity, which is the sense of events that has taken place beforehand, basically does a 180 and is rewritten. Meaning that a good example of a reboot was a comic called Crisis on Infinite Earths, in which DC had for a long time been operating with several different parallel worlds. Like, there was Earth 1, where the Justice League operated. There was Earth 2, which had the Justice Society. There was Earth 5, in which I think Earth 5 was the one where World War II never ended. No, wait, Earth 5 was the one with the Marvel family. I'm thinking of Earth 4, maybe. Earth Prime, which was our Earth. Earth 3, which was populated by, in which everybody's allegiance was on the opposite. So there was an evil version of Superman called Ultraman flying around, and Batman was Owlman, and Wonder Woman was Superwoman, I think. But, but in Crisis on Infinite Earths, all of these worlds were basically smooshed together into one Earth, in which the Justice League and the Justice Society coexisted. The Marvel family were in there. There was, eventually they established that there was an antimatter universe in which the crime society of, basically the Earth 3 characters all showed up, and events from the various different Earths were smooshed together in there too. Now, this is kind of similar to what Crisis did, what DC is currently doing. September has been their big month in which they've started relaunching everything. And the point I'm trying to get at here is, I am a huge DC Comics fan. I read a couple Marvel books, I read Thunderbolts, and I read the occasional Deadpool book. But, I read Avengers Academy, too. Avengers Academy is very good. I would recommend it. But DC is where I read the majority of my books. Now, here, I'm going to lift this computer up and take a look over here. You see, I have shelves. Now, these shelves, I'm trying to figure, there we go. Okay. Almost all of the comics on this shelf, not that one, this shelf, and this shelf, with the exception of the Tintin books on that shelf. I'm holding this computer in a weird way. Sorry about this, folks. Most of those are DC. Except I think Next Wave is up there, but Next Wave, I made an exception for Next Wave, because Next Wave was freaking awesome. It was written by one of my favorite comic book writers of all time, Warren Ellis, who is basically completely bat crap insane. Oh crap, I said bat crap. That's weird. Bat crap doesn't really work as a word. So bat censored insane. So it's basically 5 obscure Marvel characters completely reinvented with new personalities that are completely inconsistent with their previous portrayals, but are still really awesome, and they punch things, and those things that they punch explode. That's how I would describe Next Wave. And also, well, yeah, Next Wave. I'm getting off the point, though, and surprise, me talking about something and starting to talk about something else at the same time. It happens. But most of the stuff I read is DC, which was what that awkward segment where I lifted the laptop was supposed to represent. It kind of failed miserably, but what are you going to do? So, what I thought I would do tonight, and I'm going to do another one of these videos at the end of the month, once the next 2 weeks of comics have come out, but I have in here in front of me a stack of every DC book I have read this month, with the exception of this book right here, which was released the week before this all started. It was the first book to be relaunched. So what I'm going to do is, this video is going to be kind of long, so if you guys want to go grab a drink or something, then now's a good time. I'll give you a moment in order to do that while I explain this next bit. So I'm going to sit here for the next 20 minutes or so, and I'm going to go through this stack of comics, everything I've read this month. My local comic book store, they give me 20% off because I'm a member of Newbury Comics. Like, I'm subscribed. I get 20% off comics, and this month they're doing a buy 3 DC books, get the 4th free sale. So I bought a lot of comics. I will note at the end of each week that I said what stuff I didn't get, and as a result won't be telling you about. But I'm going to talk about each comic in this stack. Each of them is individually bagged and boarded. I might take them out to show you a part that I really liked or something if it's not too spoilerific. But the point of this is DC is trying to attract new readers as a part of their relaunch. Now, you guys may have heard of this relaunch prior to reboot, relaunch, whatever, prior to me talking about it with you now. But the point of this video is I want to see if you guys are even at all interested in comics. I figure maybe I can give you a couple recommendations of stuff you might like. So let's start here with Justice League #1 by Jeff Johns and Jim Lee. Now, this is DC's flagship book. It is the first book they released. It's by 2 of the top guys in their company, Jeff Johns, who writes an average of 3 books a month, and is generally pretty good, I think. I don't know, you may agree or disagree with me on that. I have all of his Green Lantern stuff, so I'm kind of a fan. But, and Jim Lee, who's co-publisher at DC Comics and also a really good artist. I'm going to set this stack of comics down and pick them up one by one. So, Justice League #1. Let me first tell... okay, overall, I liked Justice League #1. It had some flaws, but it made up for them with some really good art and some really good interaction between the 2 central characters of the issue, Batman and Green Lantern. Now, Justice League #1 is set 5 years earlier. Now, this was the first book DC published as part of their new 52, what they're calling it. And it kind of sets the stage for everything else. So the first thing you see in there is it's 5 years ago. And this video may be longer than I thought, but I'm gonna keep going with it anyways. But it basically, despite the entire Justice League appearing on the cover, it really focuses on Batman and Green Lantern, and there's a little bit of pre-cyborg Vic Stone, and Superman shows up at the end. But so you might get your hopes up that all these characters are going to be in there, and you'll be surprised when they're not. But it's a good first issue, I think. It sets things up in an adequate way. I mean, some of you have already read this, and you can agree with me or disagree with me on that. But yeah, for the next issue, I'm not going to spoil the ending, but the next issue sounds like it's going to be good. It's at least got me interested in reading the next issue, this new one. So, this goes in the buy pile. The pile of stuff that I will be picking up the second issue of. I will be sorting comics as I tell you about them into stacks regarding whether I liked them and want to pick up more, or whether I disliked them, didn't want to get them, and don't want to get any more of the series at all, or whether or not I'm on the fence and I might pick up one more issue just to see. Next up, we have Action Comics, which, for those of you who don't know, Action Comics is one of the 2 main Superman books. Superman is the title of the other one, just Superman, and then there's Action Comics, which was around for longer and was the book that Superman first appeared in when he burst onto the scene in the late 30s. But, so Action Comics is set 5.5 years in the past. It is Superman in this new DCU. Superman is the first superhero. I know in the past, the Justice Society have existed and fought crime during World War II, but in this new DCU, they are existing on Earth 2, which To make a long story short, there was a crisis a few years back that restored the multiverse. All the parallel Earths I mentioned earlier that got smooshed into one, there's now a bunch of parallel Earths again. And Earth 2 is where the Justice Society originally were, and they're going to be there again in, I think, probably December when their book gets released. But Action Comics is a Superman story. It details the first few adventures of Superman in this new continuity. There's familiar faces. You'll see Lois Lane, Jimmy Olsen, Lex Luthor has a prominent appearance. Even General Sam Lane shows up. And it's written by, oh, I didn't tell you the creative team. It's Grant Morrison is the writer, and Rags Morales is the artist. Rags Morales, who you may have heard of, he did Identity Crisis, which was a series a few years back which dealt with all kinds of issues like rape and Deathstroke defeating the Justice League single-handedly. But, and Grant Morrison, who's written a ton of stuff. He wrote a really well-received run on Batman. He's Doom Patrol, Animal Man, and Final Crisis, of course. Justice League. He did an awesome Justice League run. Like, that even people who despise everything else he's written enjoy his Justice League run. I'm going to say something right now, just before I go any further. If I copy the opinion of somebody else who has reviewed these comics, I apologize. No plagiarism is intended. I have read a lot of reviews of New 52 books, and if something slips through that I know I'm copying from somebody else, I will try to credit them in the comment box. I know there's a couple things I'm going to say later on that are of that nature. But I just want to let you guys know in advance that I'm not trying to steal anybody else's thunder. I know Linkara is doing something similar to what I'm doing, and I haven't even watched his. But if it's really similar to what I'm doing, then tough. Okay, Action Comics I really liked. I thought the artwork was nice and crisp. The story flowed really well. And the end of the story showed why one should never mess with Lex Luthor, because I won't spoil it, of course, unless you guys want me to spoil it. No, I won't. It's a very good issue, and it's a very good first impression of this new Superman. He's a lot closer to Golden Age Superman, the Superman who flew across the world and punched Hitler in the face. This is a lot closer to that sort of Superman. So this goes in the buy pile. Next up, Swamp Thing. Swamp Thing is a character concept you may have heard of. This book is, Swamp Thing, basically, he was a scientist who, I may be quoting this wrong because I'm not really the hugest Swamp Thing fan, but Swamp Thing was a scientist who, he was in I think he was in a lab accident, and his body got absorbed into a swamp, and his mind was grafted onto a elemental plant being called Swamp Thing. So he had many strange adventures, and Swamp Thing eventually, in the maxi series Brightest Day, Swamp Thing was imprinted upon by the Black Lanterns, and his mind was wiped out. And then through a very confusing set of circumstances, Alec Holland, the scientist whose mind was imprinted onto Swamp Thing, returned to life and is currently existing outside of the Swamp Thing entity. So, the Brightest Day was followed up by a very bad miniseries called Brightest Day Aftermath, The Search for Swamp Thing. All you need to know is that at the time being when this issue starts, Alec Holland is alive, and Swamp Thing is a separate being from Alec Holland. Swamp Thing is a separate elemental being that is not attached to Alec Holland as this issue begins. Now, here's an interesting thing about the DC reboot. It's not a full reboot. There are a lot of characters, like most notably Batman and Green Lantern, have their histories more or less intact as this is starting up. Now, others like Superman, like as I showed you before, are getting significantly changed around. Like in the Superman book that's coming out in a couple weeks, for example, Superman and Lois Lane are no longer married, which was a major thing that's been happening throughout the last several years in comics. But that's not true anymore. Swamp Thing is one that his history is basically intact as well, I think. At least the stuff that happened in Brightest Day is still applicable. So, I like Swamp Thing. It's by Scott Snyder and Yannick Paquette. This video is going to be really long, if at the rate I'm going through these things. But hopefully it'll be informative. Maybe I'll split it up into multiple videos and post it like that. So, I really liked Swamp Thing. It wasn't one I was expecting to really like, but Scott Snyder has written a ton of really great stuff. He's written a run on Batman that I haven't read, but I've heard was really good. And ironically enough, Yannick Paquette, the artist, also, he illustrated Batman Incorporated. So, two Batman guys writing Swamp Thing, or writing and drawing Swamp Thing. And Swamp Thing was very good. Nice, dense comic. Lots of cool plot twists. An interesting villainous force is being set up, and some good characterization for Alec Holland, our protagonist. But I didn't expect to really like this one. I actually picked this one up after Wednesday, which is when comics come out. Because I figured I heard really good things about it and I wanted to check it out. So this was one I didn't expect to really like it, but I really liked anyways. So bye, pile. Next up, Animal Man. Now Animal Man is a character who his abilities is he can channel the powers of any animal. So his history is more or less intact as well as of this. It's by Jeff Lemire and drawn by Travel Foreman. So, it's very much a horror book, first of all. DC's been doing a thing with ratings for their books now. This one's rated T+, for example. Like Justice League is rated T, and that's like the tamest reading, or the tamest rating that isn't like all ages, which is like books like Tiny Titans and which I might note, Tiny Titans frickin' rocks. Okay, buy Tiny Titans if you buy nothing else that I talk about, because it has a phenomenal sense of fun in Tiny Titans. Animal Man is very much a horror book and has a T+ rating as a result. Jeff Lemire has won critical acclaim for his work in the book Sweet Tooth, which I've read a little bit of, and I liked what I read of it. Jeff Lemire writes another book down the line called Frankenstein, Agent of Shade, which is in the stack that I have down there, but I forgot what I was going to say. I'll get to that. Animal Man is a good book overall. The story was pretty solid, and I like the characterization for Buddy Baker, Animal Man, and he's interesting in that he's a superhero who has a wife and 2 kids. So there's like a whole family dynamic with Animal Man that's kind of interesting to see. The artwork, while I would admit is good, but it's not really my thing. It's kind of an odd style. It's a little messy. It's not. It's okay. It's good artwork, but it's just not really my thing. And the story was okay, but it didn't really grab me immensely. I'm gonna put this one in the maybe pile, because I'll warn you in advance, there's not really much from the first week of comics that was like downright bad, but there were a couple things that I decided I'm not going to get because of that. I think Animal Man, actually, I'm not going to pick up the next issue of, but it's not because I didn't like it. It's more because of the, money reasons. But, okay, next up, I was dreading this, Batgirl. Now, those of you who have any idea of comics or any idea of how comics work will know that this is a title steeped in controversy. It's written by Gail Simone, who is probably my favorite comic book writer currently out there, and drawn by Ardian Syaf, who you might know from, he drew Birds of Prey for a little bit, and he also drew, he drew Green Lantern, I think, and he did, what was the last thing? He did the Hawkman story in Brightest Day. But Batgirl is a complex book, because there have been two Batgirls since Barbara Gordon. Barbara Gordon is the Batgirl in this. But there have been two Batgirls since then, both of whom have immense internet followings. They're Cassandra Cain and Stephanie Brown. Now, Batgirl is notable because she stopped being Batgirl when the Joker shot her through the spine and paralyzed her. She was handicapped for a significant amount of time. And during that time, she became the superhero, the technological superhero information broker known as Oracle, who I think who showed up in most prominently in Birds of Prey and throughout a lot of the Batman books. She was like Batman's mission control. Now, I have honestly heard multiple arguments as to whether or not whether or not Barbara Gordon should have been Batgirl again. And I've heard good points on either side. You know, there's the argument that yes, Oracle was probably more, the argument that Oracle is more integral to the DC universe than Batgirl ever was, and that keeping her as Oracle is a good idea because of that, and also because she's a major, kind of a major symbol of disabled characters in comics, because she's not only is she capable of kicking lots of ass, but she's smart, she's resourceful, and held a major spot in the superhero community. As she wasn't only Batman's mission control, she was like everyone's mission control. So Oracle was a major pillar of the superhero community and a really good representation of disabled people in comics. So there was some major controversy when it was announced that Barbara Gordon would be uncrippled and would be starring in the Batgirl book again. Now, the comic itself is vague as to how exactly the Barbara Gordon's use of her legs is restored. It said that a miracle occurred. Now, I trust Gail Simone enough to believe that that's going to be elaborated upon in a future issue. Now, the book is, and I love you, Gail Simone. You're my favorite comic book writer. It's not your best. It's I don't know. Now, I'm a person who, I forgot to give the other argument as to why she should be Batgirl again. It's because it's a world where there's super science everywhere. There's rings that can generate everything you can think of. There's men who can fly, and science that can make people fly. Why can't there be science to help somebody walk again? And that was a major argument as to why Barbara Gordon should be Batgirl again. Now, back to what I was saying before. The story is average. The artwork is pretty good overall, except there's some minor gaffes in there, like characters who are wearing one thing in one panel, in the next panel they'll be wearing something slightly different. It's noticeable, but it's not a huge thing. And the villain is kind of lame and one-dimensional, so far at least. And truth be told, I'm in the camp that loved Barbara Gordon as Oracle. Some of the trades that are on my shelf over here are Secret... No, not Secret 6. That's for another time. I'll tell you guys about Secret 6. Another one of the trades over there is Birds of Prey, which is the series that Barbara Gordon was in as Oracle. And they're very good. I'll say that. So I kind of have an attachment to the Oracle character as a result. But this is a book that, being that it's Gail Simone, I should have loved, but it just kind of fell flat, is what I'm trying to say. Now, here's the thing. I trust Gail Simone enough that I'm going to give it another issue. If it is any better, then I'll keep buying the book. If it's not, then I'm going to drop it. That's basically how I feel, and yeah. I'm going to put this one in the unsure pile. Next up, Stormwatch. Stormwatch was a fun read. It's by Paul Cornell, who is the writer, and Miguel Sepulveda is the artist. The artwork is a little inconsistent on this one, but the writing is very good. It does a good job of introducing the 9 members of the Stormwatch team. And now, this is a book where I have no idea who any of these characters are, except for the Martian Manhunter, who is inexplicably a member of the team. And Stormwatch, I think he's basically set to be like a kind of a Black Ops Justice League, is kind of the impression I got from it. Like, superheroes who are willing to kill if necessary. Like these guys, yeah, these other guys on the cover are Apollo and Midnighter, who started out as kind of an alternate universe Batman and Superman, who also happened to be gay. That was kind of their shtick, and they also were willing to kill in the line of protecting justice or whatever. But Stormwatch is a book that I wasn't really sure about, but Paul Cornell, who is probably my second favorite comic book writer, his talent shines through with Stormwatch. It's a book that it has 9 characters in it, 8 of whom I had never heard of before and had no idea why I should care about them. 3 of them, I believe, are actually completely new characters. And this book did a pretty good job of introducing each of them. I think there was maybe one of them who didn't really get a name drop or anything, but it did a pretty good job, and I am interested to see what happens next. Plus, the villain is the Moon. It's a team of, like, a Black Ops Justice League fighting the Moon. How awesome is that? So, Stormwatch goes in the buy pile. It's probably my favorite book of the first week of comics, for the record. Alright, next up is Static Shock. Static Shock, some of you may know from the animated series Static Shock, which was broadcast in, I don't know, late 90s, early 2000s. But it was a pretty good animated series, and I enjoyed watching it. Now, Static is a guy who can control electricity, and I don't know much about Static, other than he can control electricity, and I know a little bit about him from the animated series. So, in that regard, Static Shock is a pretty good comic. It is able to tell its story in... Oh, it's by Scott McDaniel and John Rosen, who co-wrote it, and I think... And Scott McDaniel did the art. So I knew one of them did the art. I just wanted to make sure which one. So, Static Shock was a very good comic. However, it the artwork was nice and action oriented. There was some good humor. It pulled all the right punches, I think. But ultimately, there's only so many books I can get a month, and I'm going to have to pass on future issues of Static Shock. Not because I didn't like it. Again, it's kind of like Animal Man. It's not that I didn't like the book. It's just that when stacked up against everything else I'm reading, I can't afford one more. So, Static Shock goes in the no pile for me, but I would recommend that you guys check it out, because it was pretty good. Alright. Next up, Green Arrow. Green Arrow is a superhero. He's like Batman, but he has a bow and arrow, and he fights crime with it. He is a millionaire playboy named Oliver Queen, and he He has an awesome beard and wears green. That's all you really need to know about Green Arrow. The beard is sadly a casualty of the relaunch. I'm sorry, I'm getting off topic here, but I want to go back to Batgirl for a minute because I just remembered something I wanted to say. The timeline in Batgirl, this mostly, like, the events of the Killing Joke, which is the story where the Joker shot Barbara Gordon, still happened in in the new DC continuity. However, the timeline has been condensed so that it's been 3 years since that happened. And during those 3 years, Barbara Gordon was never Oracle, from the looks of things, unless they're going to reveal something in the next issue. I didn't like that, because somebody said it on ComicsAlliance when they did their Roundtable review of the first week of DC relaunch. Somebody said that they seem to have forgotten that Barbara Gordon wasn't just disabled during that time. She was a disabled hero. And that's something I would agree with, because it was important, and they seem to be kind of missing the point at DC Comics about that. Back to Green Arrow, though. Green Arrow was written by J.T. Kroll and drawn by the immensely talented Dan Jurgens, creator of Booster Gold. J.T. Kroll's an okay writer. He wrote Rise of Arsenal, which I absolutely hated, but he also wrote a fairly decent run on Green Arrow after that, and he also wrote a good run on Teen Titans, which ended at the start of the relaunch. So I figured I'd give this one a shot. It's pretty average, to be honest. It's not overwhelmingly bad. The artwork is very nice, but yeah, as I said, Oliver Queen's beard is sadly a casualty of the relaunch. So he's just got some kind of stubble, but not the full mustache goatee combo. But why am I obsessing over this? It's not like it's a really big deal. Although I can imagine it would be the straw that broke the camel's back with somebody. But Green Arrow is a pass for me. Or it's going to be a not buying the next issue. Not because it's overwhelmingly bad, but because it's overwhelmingly average. I really like Green Arrow as a character too, but it just wasn't for me, this new one. Next up, Justice League International. The Justice League International is basically it's a team of superheroes from all corners of the globe who are assembled by the government to act as kind of a counterpart to the Justice League. It's kind of like, it's basically the UN assembles their own super team. And Batman is also there as a representative of the regular Justice League, and because he's the goddamn Batman, and he does whatever the hell he wants. So the team is made up of Booster Gold, Guy Gardner, who's a Green Lantern, Ice, Vixen, August General in Iron, Fire, Rocket Red, Batman, who I mentioned before, and Lady Godiva, who is British, and I have absolutely no idea who she is other than that. Except that she is the British person in the book. That's all I know. So it's written by Dan Jurgens and drawn by Aaron Lopresti, who previously drew these characters in Justice League Generation Lost, which came out last year, or earlier this year and late last year. It was a year-long series. But Justice League International, it was okay. It was a pretty good first issue. It did what Justice League couldn't, and it introduced an entire team of 9 members within the space of a single 20-page comic, which is an admirable feat, much like Stormwatch, I guess. Although Justice League International did a better job of it than Stormwatch did. So it did a good job of introducing these characters. It's a little, like, it's kind of an average start, to be honest. there's some tired old cliches that are dragged out, like the Russian guy and the Chinese guy can't get along. The British woman is snooty and doesn't want to help. That sort of thing. But it makes up for it with some good humor and some good action too. And it's very pretty. It's very, very nice to look at. I really like Aaron Lepresky's art. And a note about continuity here. The much-loved run on Justice League International from the late 80s, early 90s has sadly been taken out of continuity, but I was more okay with it than the Birds of Prey stuff getting retconned for some reason. But, so this is the first time this team has met. In the present-day DC continuity, this is the first time the team has met up, and it's a pretty good start. This goes in the buy pile. Finally, the last book of the week that I picked up, so basically I didn't buy Detective Comics #1, I didn't buy Batwing #1, or Men of War #1. Is that all of them? I think there must be one more that I'm forgetting. I'm sure I'll remember it later. Hawk and Dove #1 I didn't get because it was drawn by Rob Liefeld, and for those of you who don't know who Rob Liefeld is, look him up on TV Tropes and spend the rest of the evening being entertained by that page. So the last book of the week I got is OMAC, which I bought because I had 7 books in my hand and I needed one more because I got one more free with the deal at my comic book store. So I was really pleasantly surprised by OMAC. OMAC is written by Dan DiDio, who is the head of DC Comics, or one of the top guys at DC Comics. He's a co-publisher with Jim Lee. And drawn by, again, the immensely talented Keith Giffen, who I met at a convention recently, and he's a really nice guy. He was one of the architects of that Justice League International run I mentioned a little bit ago, the infamous Bwahaha era of Justice League, where, among other things, Batman took down Guy Gardner, the Green Lantern, in one punch because he was sick to death and was complaining, and it was awesome, and there was much laughing. But OMAC is a book about... Now, I know nothing else about OMAC. It's about a guy who goes into a Hulk-like transformation into this mohawk-wielding blue Cyberman strongman dude who, after being infected with nanomachines by a satellite called Brother Eye. That's the basic premise. And he storms a government research facility and smashes stuff. It's 20 pages of fast-paced action, lots of stuff getting blown up, lots of cool science monsters and machines and stuff. It's basically a love letter to famous creator Jack Kirby, who created the New Gods. There was a bunch of Marvel characters that he created. This was very much done in his style, and it did very well in that regard. So I liked OMAC very much. It was a little light on the story element, but Dan DiDio seems to be having fun with it, though, which is good. He doesn't seem to be, like, bored writing this or anything. He seems to be, like, it seems like he and Keith Giffen are having a ball writing a book that, it's been said that, because if a book doesn't have Superman or Batman in it, it's doomed to fail eventually. And OMAC is sadly one of those books. I don't think it'll go for more than 10 issues, but I'm going to enjoy it while it lasts because I had a ball reading this thing. Now, okay, this goes in the buy pile. All right, that's the end of the first half of this video, and I will resume it in probably an hour or so your time as it uploads. So I will see you in a little while.